Unfortunately, this video didn't go as planned. What do you think, Chris? What do you think about this Sniper 2 and the Sniper 1 in this whole situation?
If I had to do it again, I'd just stick with the carburetor. Because if you had a problem with the carburetor, you could get this car home. With that shit there, you might as well have a tow truck on speed dial.
A few months ago, me and Chris installed a Sniper EFI onto his dad's 57 Bel Air, and it worked perfectly fine. The only issue with it was it had this weird surging sound whenever you tried to accelerate. And in the comments, people kind of mentioned that there's a space, or there was a spacer in between the Sniper EFI and the intake manifold. Plus, in Sniper EFI's literature, it said that you can't run the factory intake manifold. So it has to be an EFI manifold. So Chris got an EFI manifold and a bunch of other stuff to make the kit work 100%. Also, the distributor that's supposed to go with the kit, which came with its own wiring harness, but I think it's actually the same harness that comes with the Sniper EFI. So I'm not 100% sure, but this intake manifold supposedly doesn't flow correctly for an EFI conversion. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start tearing this thing apart. We're gonna have to drain the coolant because the coolant runs through the intake manifold, get everything set up. I think we should be done with this tonight. What do you think, Chris?
I hope so. I still hold that hood hinge on.
Mm-hmm. You have to unscrew the whole rod.
Yeah, that's what I should have done in the beginning. You're in this situation where you don't want to just pull this distributor out. You need to find top dead center. Typically, you want this pointer angled towards this cylinder. So we pulled the plug out, which is difficult because this thing is equipped with headers. If anybody thinks these cars are super easy to work on, a lot of room, they're not. So we got this plug out, and then what I do is I take a ball of tissue and I shove it down in the cylinder, because what you want to do is find top dead center on a compression stroke, not an intake stroke. So we go in, once I shove this in here, we'll bump the starter, and then it will help, it'll pop out, and that tells me to quit, and then we'll look at the key mark on the balancer to see where we are as far as having top dead center. Okay, so that's a compression stroke.
You can actually hear it pretty good.
Yeah. You want to put your distributor facing towards this cylinder, towards this spark plug. And that's the base knowledge on all small block Chevys. Even most older big block Chevys are the same way. So lift this straight out. You can see how that spins. Well, when you go to put the new one in, the problem you're going to have is there's a, looks like a flathead keyway that goes in the bottom of the distributor. That flathead keyway actually runs the oil pump. So the reason why this is spinning is these gears right here are running on the back of the camshaft. You see those gears there, and then here is your line there. So this here is usually the problem with setting in the new distributor, because the oil pump might not be in the exact same location. So sometimes you got to reach down in there with a special tool or something, and you could turn that just a little bit. But when we set the new one back in, once we get the new intake on, we got to make sure that this was in that position that we removed it from, and this pointer is sitting here at that cylinder.
They weld those things on there? Is there another bolt somewhere?
No, like I said, everything's glued on these or they're gonna leak.
Super glued. Oh, is that bolt out?
It's glued in there, I think.
No.
I kept spinning it. Yeah, I think I knocked the glue off it. And the biggest problem is we didn't build this car. There's a reason why cars like this end up for sale.
The rubber gasket?
Yeah, but they RTV'd both.
Jesus.
But it's gonna have to be replaced now.
The RTV. I get rid of all these wires. Oh, I guess you're gonna wait. Ooh, some coolant in there. Get it all over the place. Smells interesting. Is that what that is?
Smells like cinnamon gummy bears.
Yeah, that's what I... Is it, are you sure that's lube?
Oh shit, that's my Astro lube. No, it's a cinnamon lube.
Why would they
made it smell like
cinnamon?
cinnamon.
You want to take that thing off?
I got a tooth off. A tooth off.
Here, you're on the wires. I need to take these off. It'll make it easier. Made these distributors actually really nice. So after you get them stuck in, they give you a tool. And this tool allows you to clock this bottom base right here. So it will turn whichever way you want it. So you could pretty much clock this any way you want it. And then whichever plug plugs into where this little notch is right here is cylinder number 1. So you just come here. If you want this thing facing forward, cylinder 1's going to be right here, which is really cool. So it kind of takes out a lot of the guesswork when you're putting one of these distributors in, because most of the time this would need to face towards cylinder number 1. In this case, it doesn't need to. You just stick this on here and that aligns it, lock it down, and then you're ready to go. Plus, if you don't have the oil pump tool, it makes sticking in it a lot easier. But if you wanted to get it exactly where you want it, you're gonna have to actually come in here and turn that oil pump drive down there. And another thing is, when you're doing this, you wanna make sure to test it without the gasket on there to make sure it's not going to bottom out.
Here's the tool you need to adjust the oil pump gear so that it'll line up with number 1 cylinder. So right now when we set this in, it's not sitting flush. So we've got to pull this out and get it to where it will fit in there for the pointer to go to the cylinder.
Which it doesn't even need to go to that point that way though.
Yeah, I don't have to, but there's sometimes I've had people help me with my stuff, and they'll actually just set timing on an old small block Chevy just wherever it lands. Well, for somebody that don't know what they're doing, and say the car breaks down, you could look it up on YouTube or something and end up watching how other guys do it, and it could probably help get you home. But to reinvent the wheel on the side of the road just off of some random experienced guy setting it up, it doesn't really help you. So here's what this tool is that I'm using. You could put a drill on the end of this and it will self prime, and the drill will pump all the oil up, and then it will come up here through the lifters and the push rods. It's good.
This thing came out though, so I think we'll be all right though.
I'm just doing that for reference. Why do you want the cap off?
So the gear spins. It makes it easier to...
Good.
As long as it don't turn. I have the fuel feed ran to the Holley Sniper 2, and since the fuel line for the feed was longer than the one for the return, I ended up running the fuel line right here. On these Sniper 2s, they're not internally regulated, so you get an aftermarket regulator. The only issue is this one wasn't tapped, so you can't mount it because, well, I could go and tap it, but the other issue is it's 3/8 NTP. But it's kind of a weird 3/8 NTP because usually 3/8 NTP you could use a -8 or a B because it's the same thread. But the issue is this regulator is like a Chinese regulator, so it doesn't actually thread in because the threads for the engagement are so far out that this, here we'll try to thread one in, yeah, here we go. So it only threads halfway in. So the ORB would only work if it was a little bit further in. I mean, it works with their fittings in a 3/8 fitting, but ORB usually would thread into a 3/8 NTP because the threads are the same threads, but one is tapered and one is straight thread. So not really that big of an issue, but this regulator also really isn't that great. So I'm probably going to end up grabbing one of my Aeromotive ones and stick it on here. I decided to direct mount it because we didn't want to have to mount this regulator somewhere into the firewall. I mean, it's just something that's kind of an afterthought. So this will pretty much just return here. This line will go to the bottom. Another thing I didn't like was on the Sniper 1, the fuel lines came out of the back, and I kind of still wish there was 90-degree fittings, but straight fittings work perfectly fine. If you had straight fittings that they give you for this, they stick this far out, and then you have these lines kind of kinked. So didn't want to have to rerun these lines because this one goes all the way to the fuel tank, and didn't want to have to run straight fittings, so we got some 90s. So this is fine. You can plumb it either way. Just worked easier because we already ran the return line, which the feed line is shorter, but the return line goes all the way to the tank as one piece. Another thing that is really bothering me with this is Holley ended up sending a replacement. My friend bought this kit brand new. He bought the Hyperspark brand new. Everything was supposed to work. And then the Sniper 1 had internal issues. So we diagnosed it. The trigger wasn't working. They wanted the Sniper 1 returned to them, and then they sent us a Sniper 2. The issue is they didn't send a full kit. They sent this patch harness, which there's the part number that's on it right here. There's no information on this harness. Plug this harness into the Sniper 2, and I'm guessing it's supposed to plug into the old wiring harness and work, but it doesn't. It doesn't turn anything on. This harness is useless. The Sniper 1 was working perfectly fine with the wiring that we had in the car. There's no reason they shouldn't have sent a whole kit. And it's just kind of irritating because this, right now, this video, we're not even finished with the car. It doesn't run and drive. It's the end of, it's fall. It's almost winter. It's going on almost 3 months of trying to get the Hyperspark set up with the Holley Sniper 1 and now the Holley Sniper 2. And it's just kind of a disaster and a nightmare. So, my friend Chris is helping his dad out get his car running, which he wanted to take to a bunch of shows over the summer. This was only supposed to take, it was like mid-July. It was only supposed to take a few hours to a day to install this kit. And now we're looking almost 3 months of trying to install this. I've worked with Holley before. It doesn't really seem like they have any sense of time frame. It's just like, whatever, you already sent us the money, you already bought the parts, and it's not their problem. So they did send the Sniper 2, but it took about a month to get that. A lot of back and forth. They wanted receipts. My friend had all the receipts to provide them. It wasn't like he bought it off of Facebook Marketplace. The only issue is I've seen a lot of these Sniper 1s for sale on Facebook Marketplace for brand new prices, and people have never used them. But what I've been reading online is every Sniper 1 doesn't trigger spark. So if you want to use Hyperspark and you have a brand new Sniper 1, you're going to be SOL because they're not going to work. And then you're going to have to go with Holley. If you bought off of Facebook Marketplace, they're not going to guarantee it. They're not going to send you a Sniper 2 because you don't have the original receipt of you purchasing it, because you bought it off of, bought it secondhand off of Facebook Marketplace, even though it was new. So this is kind of a warning that you don't want to even deal with a Sniper 1. And at this point, I would think if I got a full Sniper kit for the Sniper 2, we would have had less headache, because it would have came with the wiring harness. The Hyperspark kit comes with the full wiring harness. It comes with like almost like a fuse box distribution, and then that goes to the carburetor, the fuel injected carburetor. So, now that it's pretty much winter, there's no more car events after next week. So this is pretty much going to be not going to be able to be driven until next summer, but hopefully we can get it running in the next video. This is just kind of like a warning that Holley has no sense of time and no urgency to you driving your car. If this was my daily driver, if I was swapping this onto like a carbureted C10 or whatever it may be, whatever is carbureted, I want to do fuel injected, and you tear everything apart, and then you have to go all back to the carburetor to be able to drive your car. Or if you're trying to make an event and you can't actually make the event, and then you have to go from fuel injected back to carbureted, because Holley takes months and months to get back to you. Actually, they haven't even got back to my friend. I reached out to my contact in Holley, and it's like, even then, it's not like they have a sense of urgency. So unfortunately, this video didn't go as planned, and we didn't get the car running and driving and tuned. And what do you think, Chris? What do you think about this Sniper 2 and the Sniper 1 in this whole situation?
If I had to do it again, I'd just stick with the carburetor, because if you had a problem with the carburetor, you could get this car home with that shit there. You might as well have a tow truck on speed dial, because if you have any problems, you're going to end up having to have the car towed. So
yeah, I mean the idea of it's nice, but not having any support is worthless. It makes it worthless.
Well, and it did run great when we just stuck with the
HEI.
The HEI and the Sniper 1. I was real happy with the way it started. They could check out the previous video on how all that worked out. But trying to do these upgrades were kind of recommended by Holley themselves. But man, did we open Pandora's box on this, where the whole system's done. Now we've wired this car 3, going on 4 times. That's not an easy task on these.
Yeah, if you had a customer and you're doing this for a customer, you'd be thousands and thousands of dollars in labor just to not have a car running and driving.
Well, and I've had several people ask me to put these on their cars lately. I wouldn't do it, and I've had people ask me with the Phytex. The Phytex are even worse, because you cannot get any customer service on those when you start having issues. So, I always push people towards the Holley system because of the fact that customer service was great. Not anymore. And honestly, if you go back in history, this is our second experience with a fuel injection system that didn't work, and they're both Holleys. So I'm hoping by the time we do get the wiring figured out on this and the correct components to make this thing start, I hope it's hassle-free. If not, I'm going to tear it all off, put the HEI, and I'll even put the carburetor back on it in order so we could drive and enjoy this car, because this is just getting carried away. And on top of that, when we sent this back, I had proof that the first kit was brand new, and ended up having to spend $350 to upgrade to the Sniper 2 kit. The problem is I'm busy running a business, and that kit sat brand new, and the purpose was for another vehicle. We didn't get to that other vehicle yet, so we decided to put it on this one here, because it's the most finished vehicle to enjoy for the summer cruises and stuff. And it's just been fork out money, poor communication with Holley, and like I said, you're going into winter, and summer stuff's done. So in Colorado, we only get to do that a few months out of the year. The rest of them, they just sit in the garage and collect dust. So I don't know that I'd highly recommend doing this conversion for an amateur. Everybody has their point of view on it, but I personally think just maybe a Holley, I do like Holley carburetors. If you put those on, just get maybe vacuum secondary or mechanical secondaries. I've always liked HEI it and drive the damn thing. So that's all I have to say about it.
Unfortunately, the car doesn't run and drive like I said before, so I'm going to end the video here. You know, 3-month-long video trying to get this thing running and driving and good to go and dialed in, and it just isn't happening. So if you guys are at SEMA and you see me, Chris will be there as well. Say what's up. If you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, thumbs up, throw a comment below. As always, see you guys next time.